जा.
They want us to surrender. We will not.
On the night of January 31st, 2026, Balochistan descended into calculated chaos. From Quetta to Mastoom, from Nushki, Dalbadin and Haran to Panjgur and Tum, stretching to the coastal belt of Gwadar and Pasni, violence erupted almost simultaneously. This was no accident. This was not random. This was not localized. This was a planned, synchronized campaign strategically timed and designed to terrorize, destabilize, and announce its presence in the bloodiest way possible. Multiple locations, multiple targets. The objective was clear: maximum disruption, fear, and to seize the spotlight. Now, Pakistan has faced terrorism before, but what unfolded that night was completely different. What stood out was not just the brutality, but the coordination. Attacks were planned across vast distances, executed within narrow time windows, and sustained long enough to overwhelm response systems. This requires discipline, logistics, reconnaissance, and communication. It does not happen spontaneously. So in simple terms, this kind of violence needs planning, networks, and command structures. It needs people who know where to strike, when to strike, and how to move fighters and weapons without being detected. Now that raises a critical question. Who is capable of planning violence on this scale and sustaining it? To answer that, we need to understand the militant landscape in Balochistan, which is often portrayed as chaotic or fragmented. But in reality, it is structured and layered. And at the center of it all is the Baloch Liberation Army, a group formally designated as a terrorist organization by many countries, including the United States. The BLA has openly claimed responsibility for attacks on security forces, infrastructure, and civilians. Alongside BLA operate allied and splinter groups such as the Baloch Liberation Front and smaller outfits that appear, disappear, and re-emerge under new names. Security assessments suggest that more than 24 militant entities operate in the ecosystem either permanently or intermittently. This is not confusion, it is a design. When pressure builds on one group, fighters shift to another banner. When leadership is targeted, a parallel command takes over. This creates continuity and resilience. These groups are not lone actors. They function through cells, regional commanders, facilitators, and support networks. And that is how they are able to strike multiple districts at the same time, exactly what we saw on the 31st of January. This is organized terrorism. It is not spontaneous unrest. But the story does not stop at internal militancy. The January-February 2026 escalation did not happen in isolation. It followed a period of heightened regional tensions triggered by India's Operation Sindoor, a move widely seen as part of a coercive and hybrid strategy rather than open military confrontation. In response, Pakistan heightened its internal security posture, counter-terror operations intensified, and militant corridors were disrupted. Financing and facilitation networks came under pressure, and it is after this phase that Balochistan witnessed a sudden synchronized surge in violence. Timing matters. When attacks follow pressure on militant infrastructure and when they unfold across multiple districts with precision, analysts look beyond coincidence. They look at retaliation by a proxy. Pakistan's assessment of external involvement is intelligence-led. It is not built on one incident or one claim, but on a pattern accumulated over time. This concern is not new. In 2009, during the Sharm el-Sheikh meeting, then Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani formally stated that Pakistan had information regarding threats in Balochistan and other areas. Crucially, this reference was allowed in the joint communique. In diplomatic terms, that mattered. It meant Pakistan's concern was recorded and not dismissed. Then in 2016 came the Kulbhushan Yadav case, a serving Indian naval officer who confessed to being involved in subversive activities in Balochistan and Karachi. Beyond individuals, Pakistan has repeatedly taken its allegation to international forums. Dossiers accusing India of interference and terror facilitation have been submitted at the United Nations, a claim India has consistently denied. But denial is a part of international politics, and in conflict analysis, what matters is not denial alone. It is capability, motive, timing, and benefit. Media reports have also added layers to this picture. Regional reporting has alleged that Baloch separatist figures sought medical treatment or assistance in India. These claims are disputed, but they contribute to a broader analytical question of just how these militant leaders move, survive, and receive support. Safe havens are rarely formal. They are permissive environments. One case that continues to feature in discussions around external facilitation is that of Baramda Khan Bhutti, a prominent Baloch separatist figure who, after leaving Pakistan, went to seek a political asylum in India, a fact he publicly acknowledged in media interviews.
India should understand this, India government should understand this and give me as soon as possible my asylum request.
For security analysts, the relocation of a high-profile separatist leader to India has remained a significant reference point in assessing permissive environments, political space, and indirect support networks linked to militancy in Balochistan. Taken together in diplomatic records, legal disputes, operational patterns, and media reporting, Pakistan argues that militant violence in Balochistan fits a hybrid war model. In such a model, direct military confrontation is avoided. Instead, pressure is applied indirectly through non-state actors to impose costs, generate instability, and internationalize an internal security problem. This brings us to a key question. Why Balochistan? Well, strategically, Balochistan offers multiple advantages. Gawada challenges regional trade dynamics and directly competes with India's investment in Chabahar. At the same time, the China-Pakistan economic corridor runs through the province, making it central to Pakistan's economic future and China's regional connectivity ambitions. Undermining Balochistan means undermining CPEC, and undermining CPEC means hitting both Pakistan's stability and China's strategic reach. There's also the element of plausible deniability. Long-running grievances allow external actors to frame violence as a local uprising, even though surveys and political data consistently show that most Baloch seek greater autonomy and development and not secession. Attacks on highways, ports, and labor routes impose national-level costs without triggering full-scale war. And every incident feeds international narratives of instability which hurt investment and diplomacy. So Balochistan, in short, becomes a convenient proxy theatre. Finally, there's the battle of narratives. Conflicts today are fought not only on the ground but in information space too. Selective human rights framing, silence on civilian victims, and disproportionate focus on instability all shape global perception. And that perception has consequences. At the end of the day, the core issue is not just security. The real question is whether Balochistan has become the preferred arena for proxy confrontation, where militants are treated as tools, violence as leverage, and civilians as collateral damage. To discuss this further, we have journalist Kamran Yusuf, who's joining us from Islamabad. Kamran writes extensively and covers extensively foreign policy and security related issues in Pakistan. Kamran, thank you very much for making time for our broadcast. Kamran, we all know that Balochistan's issues are multifaceted and quite complex, to say the least. But they have both an internal and an external dimension. So focusing first on the internal issues, credible international surveys show that, and these are credible surveys that come from the Western world, they show that around 70% of the Baloch population, they favor being part of Pakistan. They demand greater provincial autonomy, but they want to be part of Pakistan. However, 30% are the ones who are advocating for freedom. The real question here is that why is the province and the narrative being held hostage by those 30%? What's your opinion on this?
Well, as far as internal dynamics of Balochistan are concerned, we know the history. This so-called insurgency or people who believe that they are or they were denied their due share by the center. It has a long story, of course, and we do understand some of their grievances are also genuine. And given the fact that we also have to understand that Balochistan, in terms of area-wise, Pakistan's largest province, 45% of Pakistan's land mass is actually Balochistan. But when you talk about their population, it is least populated province of Pakistan. So federal governments, successive governments, be it the military or the civilian governments, they also struggled because of the land mass of Balochistan reaching out to people. And then Balochistan has their own culture, tribal culture. So they take pride in that. So there are multiple factors, of course. But now, as you mentioned, that majority of the people still want to be with Pakistan, but there are only handful of population that they want, independence from Pakistan. The reason that their narrative is being amplified because now that you have so many platforms, social media, because of this reason, they amplify their narrative. So that really play a huge role. And obviously we will also discuss the external factors. So I would say that is primarily the reason. Those who have taken up arms against the state using the latest means, not just necessarily on the battlefield, but they are also employing latest propaganda tool to advance their narrative.
Kamran, Balochistan is often viewed from the prism and the lens of security alone. Do you think it's right to see it just from the lens of security? Because we do understand that it is a case of governance as well. Because we've seen numerous packages, whether it's been Aghaze-e-Haquq-e Balochistan, Puraman Balochistan package, but they fail to deliver. There seems to be no progress. What do you think is the problem here? Is it a case of lack of will, lack of capacity, or a mix of both by the provincial government?
I think certainly there is an issue of governance, but as far as resources and funding are concerned, I don't think so that there is a problem. If you see, the share of Balochistan from the National Finance Commission and even other packages that you mentioned, Balochistan has been given unprecedented funding by the center and even other provinces. It is not just simply the governance. Understanding of the province is also important. The culture, again, is a major challenge. And I think also, given the fact that Balochistan, whenever the elections take place, there are always question marks about the legitimacy of those elections, whether those who are sent to the provincial assembly really the true representative. That also kind of create a lot of complications. And we do know that Balochistan have their tribal system, the Sardars, and in the past we know that center usually try to rule Balochistan through these Sardars, and Sardars often, they resist the change. They, if you really want to educate or provide education to those people in Balochistan, they probably resist. So that's where I think the role of a center is more important, and it is a challenging situation for Pakistan. As I said, that Balochistan is 45% of Pakistan's land mass, but the population is very, scattered. So reaching out to each and every individual there is a challenge. And so successive governments tried their level best, provided the funding, but I think we need a comprehensive approach, and both in terms of, to reform the system, and then making sure that those who are sent to the provincial assemblies, people really own them.
Kamran, I couldn't agree more. It's a multitude of issues that plagues Balochistan. And like you rightfully said, successive governments have given Balochistan its share in the NFC. However, it has never trickled down to the common man. Hence, we see no progress. And rightfully so, like you said, the Sardars resist change. And I think this change, or providing basic necessities, whether it's clean drinking water, whether it's road infrastructure or education, this is being done by design so that the local populace is so engaged in addressing these issues and so stuck in these issues that they are unable to question the Sardars on their rights, on the core issues of the province that actually matter. Would you say that the latest experiment that is being conducted by the law enforcement agencies and the federal government of engaging the local government, it will prove to be fruitful? Because as we know and as we've seen, the Sardars or the influentials of Balochistan oftentimes are found either in Islamabad or in Karachi. They are rarely in these small towns of Balochistan.
I think the most important thing is that until and unless that we make every Baloch people stakeholder of the system, I think any reform or any effort or any package will remain futile. I think that this is the key point, that you have to make the common people of Balochistan, stakeholders of this entire process. And you rightly mentioned that it is not just when we cite the example of Sardars, usually, they live in Karachi or big cities like in Islamabad, or maybe they have their properties and everything. But, common people really suffer. And it is unfortunate given the fact that Balochistan is one province which is resource rich. And often this is also the one, the area that those people who have taken up arms against the states, the terrorists, exploit this, that look at, the center really exploiting your resources. So the best way forward is, one, that state should undertake steps in a manner that people of Balochistan really feel that, the center really owns us. And some of the basic necessities, you're absolutely right, whether it is education, access to, healthcare or clean drinking water, this is part of Pakistan's constitution, that every individual, whether, he or she lives in Balochistan or former erstwhile tribal areas or wherever they are, this is the responsibility of the state. And that's where probably, we lack. And often we, for example, portrayed Gwadar as a gateway to Central Asia, and even something that can transform not just Balochistan, but also Pakistan in terms of economy and prosperity. But we have seen protests over there because still we do not have in Gwadar, people still complain about the clean drinking water. We do not have yet a system that connects the national grid with Gwadar. We actually import, electricity from neighboring Iran. So these are the basic issues that we have to really address before, we take on some other challenges. And that's where I think that the government needs to really make sure. Maybe they are currently dependent on these big Sardars as apparently they serve their purpose better, maybe politically, but in the long run, that is not the way forward. I think everybody should be included in this process and they should be made stakeholders.
So, provincial autonomy in letter and spirit. Now, coming over to the external dimensions of this issue, Karan, do you think that because of its geostrategic position, Balochistan has become a playing ground for various intelligence agencies? I mean, it's not just limited to India, and we know that, of course, by interference in Balochistan, India wants to curtail Pakistan and it wants to contain China. But then we also have Mossad, who wants to target and contain Iran. Multiple issues that it wants to achieve, multiple goals that rather it wants to achieve, whether it's curtailing Iran, China, and of course Pakistan. How do you see this?
Well, we often, heard about the great games in Asia. And if you really talk about the great games, new great games in Asia, the big powers competing for, their interests. And we often heard of this conspiracy theory that Balochistan has always been at the center of those great games because of its geostrategic location. Second, it has, rich natural resources, and now the rare earth minerals and so forth. It has become even more important. So there is no denying the fact that there are local issues, but then there are external elements. You talked about, why it serves the purposes of those external elements, because if Balochistan remains volatile, so Pakistan cannot really realize the true potential, the economic potential, the regional connectivity, Gwadar Port, and even the Belt and Road Initiative. So China even cannot really fully utilize the Gwadar port. So we have to understand that who will really be the beneficiary. And the one key element is that in the past, usually, just forget about Pakistani analysts and experts, we usually may have bias. And sometimes when we point fingers at the outside elements, there is always an element that we are trying to divert attention from our own, internal problems. But lately, I have seen that even outsiders, that I've spoken to many independent experts sitting in Washington, they tend to now agree that, there is absolutely no doubt. There is circumstantial evidence, there is otherwise evidence that India and other intelligence agencies are actively really creating unrest in Balochistan. And, before Pahalgam incident, we know that Balochistan, even Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Independence Day from Red Fort in 2015 mentioned Balochistan deliberately. And even we knew that India was always using these groups as proxy to undermine Pakistan's development or achieve their whatever nefarious designs. But after Pahalgam, if you see their commentators, their retired military officials, their diplomats, their experts, they are openly now saying, they say that of course, that what they did, they tried to, send missiles in Pakistan on May 7th, and Pakistan responded befittingly. I don't want to go into details. The rest is history, everybody knows. But the other thing that they pointed out, that we must support all those groups that are, inimical to Pakistan, like DLA or Majid Brigade, try to inflict as much damage as much we could. And they are doing it. I think there is now an open secret, and there is also an acknowledgement in the Western capitals as well. Unfortunately,
right.
We were on the receiving end. We were facing the brunt of this terrorism and extremism. Yet we were also blamed for, supporting so-called cross-border terrorism. And the world, particularly the Western countries, accepted India's narrative. Now it appears to me that slowly and gradually, people do in the Western capitals realize that India is playing a dirty game. So that's where I think Pakistan can really capitalize on it.
I think, Kamran, it's high time that Pakistan focuses on its narrative building because, like you mentioned, Modi at the Red Fort, we've all seen and heard Ajit Doval's infamous speech that he gave in a university vis-a-vis Balochistan. And then let's not forget Baloch leaders who foment terrorism in Balochistan, the likes of Bramdag Bhutti. They have close ties with India. Not just close ties, Bramdag is on record for seeking asylum in India. He wanted to go to the Indian embassy in Switzerland to seek an asylum. So all of these things have been there. We've been talking about it, but I think it's high time that we connect the dots for the world to see.
Indeed, I think what really India and even their proxies really overplayed their hand. I think the Jaffer Express incident really played a huge part. Of course, we know that India was sponsoring and supporting all these proxy groups, and earlier they were carrying out attacks limited to security officials or probably hit and run attacks. But that Jaffer Express incident really shook, of course, Pakistan, but also the Western capitals, that India is really going overboard here. And I think that was the reason after the Pahalgam attack, if you see, despite the fact that India has a very deep economic and strategic relationship with these Western countries, but they were very cautious. They were not ready to subscribe to India's narrative. And they feel like that India is also playing a dirty game. So these are the fine, details and incidents where Pakistan can, build its case, because India has so far presented itself as a victim of terrorism. However, everybody knows that India, on the other hand, is one of those countries. It is not just carrying out such extrajudicial killings or supporting these proxies in Pakistan. We have a long history. But what India did under BJP, they thought that they are already a big power to be reckoned with. They carried out assassinations in Canada. They also attempted a failed assassination in the US, in the UK as well. And that really, I think, shook the Western capitals. And we know what happened after assassination of a Sikh leader in Canada, how the relationship really evolved. So on the contrary, whenever India blamed Pakistan, there was absolutely no evidence that Pakistani state was involved in those incidents. But like in Canada's case, or the failed attempt in the US in one of the Sikh leaders, there was absolutely clear evidence. The Canadian intelligence agencies, the Americans, really provided the evidence that even the Indian, Home Minister was directly involved, even Ajit Doval involved. So these are the kind of events that could really help Pakistan shape its narrative, and I think we should focus on that as well.
Kamran, thank you very much for making time for the World Order. It was a pleasure, and thank you for this very insightful discussion. That's all from the World Order for today. We'll see you next week.